Hello and welcome back to Web Design for Small Business. In this video, part 20, homepage, we're going to be covering creating the homepage for our website. We're also going to take a look back at our location page and fix a couple of bugs in there, and then we're going to move on and create a keep alive for our login. So to start, we're going to go back into our location page, and there's just two quick things we need to fix for this. First of all, the day of the week, we want to ensure that this variable is represented as an integer because we're comparing it to another integer. Right now, as it is, this creates a string. In order to force that number to be recognized as an integer, what we do is in front of it, we add a set of parentheses and type in int for int. And what that'll do is that'll take this numeric string and convert it into an integer for us, or at least force it to be an integer. So that way when we do an integer comparison, it will always know the right format. The second thing we need to do is our current time. The actual date function doesn't create an actual date element or variable. It creates a date string. So this is a string, while these two that we're comparing it to are actually date variables. So we want this to be a date variable as well, and the format doesn't actually matter. So what we're going to do for this is simply delete the content in there, so it just says date, and then underscore create. So change it from date to date underscore create, and delete everything within the parentheses. And this will give us the current date and time as more or less a timestamp, which is what these two are creating. So it can allow for a direct comparison between them. Before, we were getting some errors if you were just having the date, where it wouldn't properly recognize that, and then our date and time comparisons here weren't coming through properly, and it was showing closed when it should have been open. So that should resolve all of those issues. So save that. Okay, so save that out. You can close the location page, and we're going to go to our home page. Okay, so in the home page, we can delete our placeholder text. And I'm going to add a small blurb that I typed up. And on top of that, I'm going to add a couple of boxes. So the second one is going to contain an image. So I'll just leave that as an image placeholder. And then this one here is going to be a box. It's going to have a class well. So what a well is it's one of the predefined Bootstrap classes that will basically just create a box with a border around it. So we're going to use that for this text and see what that looks like. Okay, so first for our image file, I have an image that I'm going to copy into the image folder. Okay, so copy that image over, Highway 45 exterior. This is basically just a picture of the exterior of the restaurant. So give it a source attribute, src, https:// highway45.ca/img/highway45exterior.png, and give that image alt text. Highway 45 restaurant exterior. Okay, and going to give this a width is equal to 100%. So this image should fill the entire width of this div. Now this div, I can then give an ID, home img, home-img. No. Home image, and then I can set properties for that in our CSS page. Okay, so I'm just going to save that. Okay, and in this little well, I'm going to add another message. No MSG. Added with cooking. Break. All food cooked with canola oil. And save. Okay, so now I just want to go and take a peek. Notice that right now this is closed, but we're within the hours that they should actually be open. That was the issue. I'm just going to refresh that, and now it says open. So that fixed that bug. And go back to our home page. Okay, so this is that well, what the well looks like, and the text below, and our image. So the main thing I wanted to do with that div is I wanted to give it a border with rounded edges to just kind of trim that and give it a little bit more padding to bring it in. So I am going to go to our CSS, and I'm just going to time-lapse the next little part to skip through all the editing that I did until I got it the way I liked it. Okay, so at the end of all that, this is what we have. So our well with our no MSG added with cooking, all food cooked with canola oil message at the top. We have our image. Both those have their nice rounded green border. That is the same rounding as the green border as all the rest of our stuff. And our little blurb at the bottom. So how did we end up getting all this all said and done in our layout? Go back to our code. So for the actual HTML, we have our, within our panel body, we have a div with a class of well and an ID of home disk. Inside that we have an h4 tag and then our little blurb for the top. Next line we have a div with an ID of home image, and then we have an image with their source tag src with their image location, an alt with Highway 45 restaurant exterior. The alt image is basically if this image doesn't load, that will be the text that displays underneath it or in place of it. So just description of what the image is, basically. And then we have the width set to 100% so that it will scale it accordingly to the width. And then we break that div, add an actual break at the end of that to give a space before our last one, which is just an h4 tag with an ID of home info and our blurb. Okay, so going into our CSS now, we created, first we added well after the panel so that the well attribute, the well also gets the border attributes, and that's how we got the well to work. And then for the description within it, we added padding of 1 view width. So what that did was it just gave us an interior border around the inside of 1 view width, so that way when we scale it, it just helps to kind of center that text. Okay, next we did a home disk space h4 so that we could specifically change stuff on that h4 within the div with the ID home disk. And in there we changed the text alignment to center, gave it a font size of 2.4 vertical or viewable width, and made that important, and changed the color to our red and made that important. Both of those have to be important, and we had to add it within this h4 instead of just adding it here. Otherwise the h4 attributes would overwrite the ones there and thus nullify anything we're trying to change. So it had to be applied to the last one, which was the h4, but we don't want it to apply to all h4 items, just the one from this div with the ID home disk. So that's how that is written. And that comes together to look like that. Now the reason why I went with 2.4 VW is because that was pretty much the largest I could get to 1 decimal place. That would allow it to be on 1 full line. Viewable width means that it scales with the size of the screen automatically, like our title here. However, if we increase or decrease the size, it does not get affected by that. So increasing the size all the way up would actually make it go over, because the rest of the space shrinks and the border increases. But the size of that text does not. So the disadvantage here is that when this is viewed on a very small screen, the writing itself becomes very small. But that is more or less acceptable. As you can see, this text, which you can increase or decrease the size of, is also relatively small as well, so it will be okay. Alright, moving on to our image. So the CSS for the image, we again had to break this into two parts. The first being the home IMG. We gave it a margin of 1 viewable width, a padding of 0, and a width. Now for the width, we did a calculation, which you can also do. CSS allows for calculations. So how you do that is you write calc with parentheses and then the math in between. Now the math has to be variables that you could assign to it regardless. So because percent is not the same as viewable width, so 100 viewable width is 100% of the viewable screen size. Right? So the size of your entire monitor or screen on your mobile device, 100% of that width. Since we're talking VW, if we were talking height, that would be VH. But we're talking about 100% of this. That would be 100 VW. So 1 is 1% of this entire space. Percentage is a relative. So while this is more or less absolute, so the absolute 100% width, percent is the relative. So when I have a box, 100% of the height of, or the width of a box within that box would be constrained by the width of the parent box, whereas this would override it. So if we took 100%, or if we took 100% and subtracted 2%, it would not be the same as this. Whereas if we took the width as 98 VW, that would actually make it larger than it would actually fit in our screen, and it would be clipped off to the right. The reason for that is because we have space on the left side that is taking up more than 2 VW. So it creates that. So we don't want that to be used in VW. We want it to be in percent to fit within the constraints of the other box that we have, the parent box, this guy here. So we need it to be 100% here, not 100 VW, which is from here to here. Okay, but we want this gap not to be just 1%. We want it to be in VW, and thus we get a better kind of automatic refitting when we scale it. So in order for that to work, we need to subtract the 2 VW, which is 1 on either side, from the 100%. And that's how we get this, and it fits perfect. Otherwise, basically what you'll do is you'll see this space here, and then this will either be larger, so it'll either go over, or it'll be less, or it'll snug up, but basically the two sides won't be the same. So if you want it so that both sides are the same, that's kind of how it has to be done. You can play with the numbers yourself if you want to see the differences that makes, but trust me when I say that's how you get that to work. And then text align center, just making sure that it tries to prioritize the centering. Now, applying to the image itself, we do margin and padding of 0 because we want it to fill up 100% of that box. And then we're giving, and remember on the actual image itself, we had a width of 100, so that will automatically fill 100% of the width, allowing the height to scale automatically in ratio to the width. Now, on top of that, we add the border and border radius attributes here. If you apply it to the parent div instead of the image itself, you would either get a square clipping, so the image would appear squared over top of the border and give a weird effect where it's cutting into the border, or if you also rounded the image, so you gave it the image radius but gave the border here, you would actually get a bit of a cutout, like a little crescent on each corner of blank space. That doesn't really look good. And finally, if you try to apply both to both, you still get a little bit of that crescent, but you also get some overlap. So this is the cleanest way to do it. As you can see, I have one border. If I zoom in, you can see there's like a 1 pixel crescent there, which isn't a huge deal, but that gets significantly more prominent if you try to do it any other way. So this is the cleanest way to do that. Finally, the home info, give it a text indent, which is this space here. So like your paragraph indent, that's called a text hyphen indent. And I gave that 2 VW, and then I gave the whole thing a padding of 1 VW. So 1 VW, which is the same as I gave that image, so these line up. And it would line up on this side too, except this is left aligned and not full. And then you can see this one actually isn't, so it sticks. This is the default width, which looks like it might be half a VW or greater, or it probably doesn't use VW at all, but yeah, because it's not scaling at the same rate. So I'm not sure what it uses, but it uses the default. But it lets it stand out a little bit more, and then it just gives it a little bit of a nice taper there, and then continues down. So I'm happy with the way that looks. And yeah, so that's our home page. Okay, so now the next part of this video, we're going to talk about our login. So this is our login as it is. Now the problem with this is that whenever you close the page or log out, you have to log in every single time. And you don't get a choice of how long that login lasts. Right now we have it set to 1 hour. So every hour, basically every time you're going to the site, you have to log in again. A lot of people who visit sites on a regular basis, but not so regular that they're staying active on the page to keep themselves logged in, prefer to be able to stay logged in without having to re-log in. Now, one of the simple ways of doing that is just having your browser remember your credentials, but that's not a very secure way of doing it. The easiest way is just having the site remember it for you. So making that cookie that we created last longer. And we can change that expiration date to really anything that we want. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a little box underneath this that allows users to select how long they want to stay logged in for. So in order to do that, we need to open up our index.php page and add another field underneath this. So I'm just going to, you can copy either field, the username or the password, doesn't really matter, and paste it in below the password. The FA user lock, we're going to change that, and open up our Font Awesome, look for font, and I'd like to use the retweet symbol. There might be like a refresh. Yeah, so there's sync, alt. I kind of like the sync alt more than the sync. So I recommend either that retweet if you like kind of more of a squared, or the sync alt. I think I will just use the sync alt. sync alt, and change the ID and the name to Keep Alive. Keep Alive. You can delete the placeholder because this is going to be a select box. And it's giving me that red because it doesn't have a closing tag. And give it an opt group with a label of keep-alive. Okay, so option value equals. So the value is going to be our number in seconds, and then what we'll put for the actual text is, for example, 1 hour. Or you can just write out the word hour. I don't know why it's giving me 2 tabs when I clearly just want 1. So I like to kind of go exponentially larger. So I'll give 1 hour, 2 hours. In fact, I'm not even going to give 1 hour because I find most people, when they're trying to order something, they might actually need 2 hours to decide what they're going to order and then place the order. So giving them any option of keeping them logged in for less than that, and they might log out in the middle of their order, which would then lose the order and cause them to have to restart it. We don't want that to happen for sure. So give them time. So I'm going to go 2, 4, 8, 12, 24, week, month, year. Forever. Okay. 8, 12, 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, forever. Okay, so if you remember our math, it is 7,200 for 2 hours. Okay, so 1 day, 7 days, 30 days, 365 days, and 3,650 days. Our forever is actually 10 years, but if you're using the same computer for 10 years, there's something seriously wrong with you, and the cookie will only last as long as the computer it's stored on. So, yeah. 10 years should be basically virtually forever. You might not even be using the same website by then. Technologies change. 10 years is a long time. It is essentially forever. So you can have that any number you want if you want to have it longer. I usually just like to stick it there because, hey, making them re-log in at once every 10 years isn't going to kill them. Okay, so save that. Oh, I forgot to change this to our keep alive. And save that again. Go back to our site, refresh, log in, and now we get this nice little keep alive. But wait, it doesn't recognize our icon, so let's double check that. Font awesome. Free. Refresh. FastFa sync alt. FastFa. Ah, my Y key again. That sticky Y key gets me every time. Okay. So, going back, logging in. However, seeing that is the icon you get if it's trying to find one and it can't find it. So if you typed in something wrong, this is the one that you'll get. So if you ever see that and wonder what it is, it means that you typed it in incorrectly, or you're typing in one that you don't have access to. So important to keep that in mind. Refresh. And there we go. That's the symbol we wanted. Perfect. So now you can see the 2 hours is default. You can actually change that, which one is selected by default. So if we wanted the 4-hour one to be our default, I'll probably have the 1 day as default. And you just change it to, or add selected into that. And that one will from there on always be default. So log in, 1 day is default, but you can change it down or up. Alright, so now we just need to go in and edit that in our login page. So log in, and we need to grab the variable. So let's again copy either the username or password, paste that, and this is now going to be our KA. This is going to be keep alive. And instead of filter callback and passing it through that, we're going to change this to filter validate int, because this should always return a number, right? And we want it to be an integer, and this will provide that for us. So that way, if somebody is trying to hack and just pass variables, this will always be a number and can't be anything else. Okay, so right here where we're setting our user cookie, that is where we need to check this. Okay, so if there is no KA, so if that variable doesn't exist whatsoever, we're going to set it to a default. KA is then set to, and we're going to set it to the same as our 1 day. and I'm not using quotes. If you use quotes, it'll save it as a string. Not using quotes saves it as an integer. So KA is set to 86400. And then all we need to do is time plus, and then instead of 3600, we are going to put our variable. And that's it. Save that. And honestly, you can even put this, if you wanted to save space, you can put that right there. It still kind of fits within there. And save. Nice, clean, neat. Okay. And that's it. So you can try that out if you like. Basically, just log in as normal, keep alive whatever day you set it to. And boom. It will keep me logged in until I hit that logout button or 1 week passes. Cool. Alright guys, I will see you in the next video.